And to Newswatch, well, this was a bit awkward. Channel 9 presenters, Peter Overton and Tracy Grimshaw, were sent to cover the Queen's funeral. But how were these two Australians meant to identify some of the minor celebrities who turned up, like, Britain's new Prime Minister?
Yes.
No, hard to identify. Maybe minor royals, members of the... I can't identify them at this point.
We can't spot everyone, unfortunately.
Joining me on Newswatch is Sophie Elsworth, media writer for The Australian. Sophie, it's always difficult for the Australian media to cover such an intensely British event, although I think most of the Australians there would hope not to get caught out so completely as that.
Oh, look, Andrew, it wasn't great to not be able to recognise the British Prime Minister, especially the fact that she's a female. Look, Peter Overton saying they couldn't really see her, but I'm not so sure I'm buying that, Andrew, but it was hugely embarrassing and the video's gone viral, so it's not a good look for Australia.
Oh, gosh, hope my mistakes don't go viral. Meanwhile, back home, Sophie, ABC host Stan Grant writes on an ABC site that's not allowed to talk about exactly what it then talks about, how, you know, all about colonialisation, empire, Aboriginal sovereignty and blah, blah, blah. And is angry. And it's so angry, he says, that I've been short of breath and dizzy. Writing this is not good for me. I feel my pulse racing now. I feel the tension building in my head, the veins constricting. And he asks, how do we, and he means Aboriginal people, not fall prey to soul-destroying vengeance? Now, either that's more inflammatory hyperbole from Grant or a condition requiring professional attention.
Well, it was interesting in the piece, Andrew, because Stan Grant didn't actually reference that he hosted Q&A on Thursday night after he wrote this. He hosted it before he wrote this piece. And he didn't mention that they talked about all these issues on that Q&A episode. And I think it's really concerning, the comments that Stan made, but he didn't reference that he hosted that show, which was quite a controversial episode. Basically, it was a pro-Republican episode. It was bagging the British monarchy. If it was so stressful for Stan, was it appropriate that he was hosting that show? And I wonder if the ABC have offered him support, because it sounds like he really has been struggling, as he explains in that piece, Andrew.
Well, I just wonder, you know, whether he lets a little bit of the licence get away from him. He also said this past week has shown him history written as a hymn to whiteness, which escaped me, I must say. And sometimes I wonder what it must be like to be white. Now, again, if Stan Grant really does wonder what it is to be white, couldn't he simply ask his wife or maybe some of his mother's relatives before publicly treating whites as some sort of strange and hostile species of which he knows little?
Look, it was a very provocative piece, Andrew, but I think we're just continuing, as you talked in the show tonight, we're seeing this division by race in Australia. It's happening more and more, and I think it's a really sad state of affairs that we seem to be looking at each other and speaking on what kind of colour your skin is. It's getting beyond a joke now, I think. And can we just stop this race baiting and division in Australia that seems to be continuing, and especially as a result in the recent weeks with the Queen's death?
Well, also, Grant, in this extraordinary piece, much publicised by the ABC, attacks Aboriginal leaders for allegedly not defending rugby league player Caitlin Moran, who he claims was punished the equivalent of a quarter of a salary, not really true, the fine suspended, for an Instagram post he said was just deemed offensive to the Queen. Sophie, why does Grant say it was merely deemed offensive and not say exactly what Moran said?
Well, Andrew, I don't actually want to say what she said because the words are disgraceful, and I'll be clipped up and it'll be put on Twitter that I've said those words. But I think it was shameful what Caitlin Moran said. Regardless of her skin colour, she made highly offensive comments about the Queen. Now, free speech, you can say what you like, but this was pretty appalling stuff. And ABC were talking about it in detail the other night on Q&A, which surprised me as well, that they repeated the slur that she gave. And I think Caitlin Moran, I mean, the thing here, Andrew, is we seem to be defending her.
Yeah, exactly correct. Likening the Queen to an animal, well, I certainly imagine Stan Grant really should have mentioned that. Sophie Elsworth, thank you so much for your time.